Since J.K. Rowling emerged from that cafe in 1997, brandishing her God-given manuscript and knowing full well she would soon be rich enough to take the lot from even the most expensive train trolleys in the world, Harry Potter has influenced and permeated every facet of popular culture. After introducing several billion people to the entertainment value of witches, wizards, and, if those weird religious purists are to be believed, the joys of Satanism, it was only a matter of time before Harry made his way into the video game world. And boy did he ever! We were promptly served our obligatory movie adaptation games, of course, but gamers went potty for Potter in all forms, from the foolish wand-waving and silly incantations of the Xbox Kinect and Pokemon Go-style augmented reality, to the Quidditch World Cup and Lego-based romps. There is a lot out there, too much in fact, so give that time turner a couple of spins, and let's go back to 2 sentences ago when I mentioned the movie adaptations, because that's all we're going to be talking about today, I'm sorry. So, are you ready for some trivia? I'm Peter from TripleJump, and here are 10 things you didn't know about the Harry Potter video games. Number 10. Attention to detail. Bit of a broad, almost wildcard-esque entry to start with, but a crucial one all the same. Like all popular franchises, Harry Potter has its purists, asserting the likes of, actually, I think you'll find the Ravenclaw mascot is an eagle, not a raven. So whenever new material is released, there will always be consumers ready to pick holes in it. Luckily, the Harry Potter games sensed this and provided some neat details for those eagle-eyed players to spot. For instance, in the Order of the Phoenix, the 3rd floor corridor has a random locked door that can't be accessed at any point in the game. At first glance, this seems to be, at best, unused content, but many fans speculate that it's actually meant to be the now sealed entrance to the Forbidden Corridor of the first book. Makes you wonder if the giant chess pieces, devil's snare, and flying keys are all still down there, or if anyone bothered to sweep up Professor Quirrell. A detail in the Chamber of Secrets game that developers didn't need to add in, but which acts as a great bit of internal consistency, is that when you get transformed into Goyle via Polyjuice Potion, getting caught by a prefect will see points being deducted from Slytherin rather than Gryffindor, given that you are disguised as a Slytherin student. Annoyingly though, they'll stop deducting points after a while, probably because the devs didn't want you decimating Slytherin's total in the space of 10 minutes. But god, seriously, even the handheld ports of these games went the extra mile at times. The Game Boy Advance version of the Philosopher's Stone, for example, is unusual compared to similar games of the time, in that it features a few non-ambidextrous sprites. Artwork of this kind is often simply flipped horizontally when a character moves left or right, and that's certainly true of Harry's running animation. However, when it comes to spell casting, you'll find that unique assets were made for each cardinal direction to ensure the boy who lived is always holding his wand in his right hand, no matter which way he's facing. Number 9. The voice cast. While the Harry Potter film series featured more British character actors than you could shake a Game of Thrones at, the games didn't have that kind of budget or star availability. However, they did hire a few actors who, while not exactly as famous as their film counterparts, have their own claims to fame. While Harry and Draco Malfoy were voiced in The Philosopher's Stone by big and small screen actor Joe Sourbutt, which I swear is a variety of every flavour bean, he was later replaced in The Chamber of Secrets and Prisoner of Azkaban by Tom Attenborough, who is Richard Attenborough's grandson and David Attenborough's great-nephew. Additionally, Snape was voiced by Alan Corduna, who, as well as starring in seemingly everything on British TV, was also the voice of Gehrman the First Hunter in Bloodborne. Clearly, fame is everything, Mr. Potter. But of course, there are a few exceptions to the previous point about a lack of returning cast. While for the first 4 games, Ron Weasley was voiced by the far cooler named Greg Chillin, the apostrophe is missing yet implied, film actor Rupert Grint did reprise his role in the Half-Blood Prince and Deathly Hallows games. Similarly, Tom Felton voiced Malfoy in The Order of the Phoenix, Half-Blood Prince and Deathly Hallows Part 1. James and Oliver Phelps returned as Fred and George Weasley in Order of the Phoenix and Deathly Hallows, and Ralph Fiennes even opted to play Voldemort in Goblet of Fire. He didn't stick around though, but maybe that's because that game removed free roaming and gave you a level select screen instead. Revolting. Number 8. Harry Potter and the Changes of Secrets. Chamber of Secrets? More like Changes of Secrets. Oh, I literally just said that, sorry. Well, it wasn't necessarily unique to just the US release. Chamber of Secrets changed a few things around after worries that certain phrases may be seen as offensive to American audiences. For instance, the living painting acting as the password keeper for the Gryffindor common room, who was called the Fat Lady in all references to her in the books, movies, and other supplementary materials, was instead named the Pink Lady. Another rather prophetic change in the Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance editions of Chamber of Secrets was replacing the word Muggle to non-magical born, predating the continually mocked no-maj phrase from the Fantastic Beasts movies by a number of years. This makes less sense the more you think about it. Sure, I can accept that American witches and wizards have their own lexicon, even if no-maj sounds ridiculous. But firstly, this game seems to have got in there long before that term entered the official canon, and secondly, and more importantly, this is set in a British witchcraft and wizardry school, so it's clearly got nothing to do with what magical Americans say instead of Muggle. It's like watching the UK release of High School Musical and finding out that Zac Efron is actually the captain of the rugby team. Anyway, I'm digressing here. There was one other major change in the game's US release that was arguably justified, if a little unexpected. While Stephen Fry had been the narrator for the European audiobooks, the US had inexplicably decided that Americans wouldn't appreciate the dulcet tones of General Melchett, and instead chose to have a different but also British actor, Jim Dale, read them instead. So when a narrator was needed for the Chamber of Secrets video game, both audiobook readers were brought on for their respective continents. God, it's like Philosopher and Sorcerer all over again. Number 7. Cut content. No, not that one. While some content in a video game deserves to end up on the cutting room floor, developers occasionally leave stuff in the game files that was never used, or items out of bounds in the finished builds that they never suspected anyone would be able to find. In particular, the PC build of the first game contains a few notable examples of this. One of the more interesting is that the Dursleys' game models can be found hidden in the files, despite none of the characters ever actually making it into this release or any of the other ports for that matter. A more existentially disturbing thing, however, can be found just outside the boundaries of the finished product, in that there are several inaccessible rooms dotted around the void outside of the camera's view, which can only be accessed via a no-clip cheat. The rooms contain a number of characters, including Fred and George apparently doing some shady dealings with some unnamed students, Quirrell having some alone time between lessons, and Crabbe, Goyle and several other students having a T-posing contest like the mad lads they are. Further along in the game, at the end of the Fireseed Caves, is a room containing Hagrid's hut, which looks eerily like a stage set. This, along with the fact that entities in video games are sometimes referred to as actors, gives the impression of some kind of Wizarding World Truman Show in which we play the hapless main character. Was any of this even real? Was Voldemort just special effects the whole time? Well, I mean, he was, but just go with the fantasy here. Number 6. Cancelled minigames. Granted, we are again talking about content unearthed from the game's code here, but this very much deserves its own entry, because rather than scrappy old bits of assets dumped beyond the boundaries or bits and bobs buried deep within other artwork, we're talking here about entire minigames that were once planned but never fully implemented. In Prisoner of Azkaban for the Game Boy Advance, there are remnants of an almost fully completed root beer tapper clone, where you would act as a bartender serving pumpkin juice to thirsty members of Hogwarts. Its basic directional controls do work, but it isn't fully finished as there's no actual function for picking up the juice, with the glass sliding past the characters and smashing on the ground. Someone who worked on the game mentioned in a forum thread that it was removed last minute over fears of a legal issue between EA and Bally Midway, who owned the license until they closed in 2010. In the Chamber of Secrets PC game, you can also find the remains of a Flying Ford Anglia minigame with code outlining that it would control similarly to Harry's broom in the Quidditch sections. The player would turn to avoid obstacles which would damage their health bar, and there's also evidence of a timer function and boost ability. In the context of the game, the player would have been tasked with steering clear of muggles and remaining hidden until their arrival at Hogwarts. While no level was ever implemented in the final build of the game, there is a partially working bit of gameplay to be found in a leaked alpha version of the game, and my god, it's the stuff of nightmares. I feel carsick. Number 5. The developer comments. We may as well go for a full hat trick of data mining entries while we're on the subject before we move on to more of the broader game trivia. Developers like to have fun, don't they? After all, they spend hundreds of hours writing out long strings of code that no one except their fellow team members is ever going to read, right? Well, that was the case until sleuths came along and started pouring through the data of every game ever released to try and find that juicy extra hidden content. For instance, in the PC editions of the Harry Potter games, some rather amusing comments can be found amongst the code from bored or frustrated programmers, including these, for example, from the Philosopher's Stone. I'm sure this is all horribly unnecessary. Welcome to Hacksville, population me. These times aren't accurate. Complete bollocks. Set the opacity. This totally sucks from a serious programming standpoint, because I should be able to use the constant invisible value, but that doesn't work because Unreal Script sucks ass. And perhaps most chillingly of all, Vernon, enemy of all that is true and good. In the GameCube edition of the same title, lyrics from the Bob Gibson song Tomorrow can be found for no obvious reason. Line, if you had gone tomorrow yesterday, now you don't see. Line, you could have gone tomorrow and returned today at 3. And of course, the fun and games continued in the Chamber of Secrets and beyond, with the likes of Secret Area Found, oh most glorious delight and joy. Wait for Flit done with his crap. And perhaps most chillingly of all, Vernon, still enemy of all that is true and good. Okay, I made that last one up, but it's in my headcanon. Number 4. The Watson family's outlet. While other actors, including Tom Felton and Rupert Grint, have lent their voices to some of the games, as previously mentioned, happy memories of entry number 9. Daniel Radcliffe and Emma Watson never did so. However, who needs a voice when you've got a physical likeness? Emma Watson's brother certainly doesn't. As revealed during an interview with Conan O'Brien on his US talk show Late Night in 2007, Emma Watson once dragged her brother along to a press junket where the Order of the Phoenix game was being featured. In a sign of amazing self-restraint, instead of doing the normal brotherly reaction to an annoying sister rabbiting on about her film career, which incidentally would be telling the press that she bites her toenails or, at the very least, throwing throwing the nearest bit of Harry Potter merchandise at her insufferable sister head, young Master Watson instead resorted to hurling benches at her within the game itself with the Wingardium Leviosa spell. I have to admire this. If nothing else, it's a rather creative way of getting catharsis from wanting to maim your sister's face without damaging her acting and modelling career. If only all of our annoying siblings were Harry Potter film stars. This game is the outlet we all need. Number 3. Malfoy's Redemption. Changes have to be made in any adaptation, don't they? Dumbledore asked, calmly.
You put your name in a goblet of fire.
However, when it comes to video games being different to their film or book source material, the usual excuse is that certain scenes simply do not translate into engaging gameplay segments. For example, in the Philosopher's Stone, Harry's initial visit to Diagon Alley and ride on the Hogwarts Express is not included, presumably for pacing reasons more than anything else, though that didn't stop the developers including a later segment in which your friend Hagrid takes his friend Harry on a shopping trip in the middle of term once the player was better acquainted with the game. And the same can be said for all manner of narrative changes made throughout the series, except for one. In the Deathly Hallows Part 2, one major plot point is included that, again, Potter fans had never seen before, either in the book or on the big screen. However, the reason for its inclusion seemingly had nothing to do with gameplay or pacing. In fact, it made it to the game because it was originally intended to be in the film of the same name before being cut. As revealed in some documentary footage filmed on set, Malfoy was once intended to throw his wand over to Harry after being hugged by Voldemort, in a moment of redemption we never got to see at the cinema. Those of you who played this game in particular will of course already know that this was included in there, so it's hardly a thing you didn't know about Harry Potter. However, you might not have been aware of the reason for its inclusion, and that this is in fact pretty much all that remains of a dramatic movie scene that we never actually got to see. Number 2. The game-breaking bug. Aragog isn't the only bug here. Vampire mosps are also a known pest inside the castle grounds. But seriously, even the best games have bugs, and that's okay. The best games, however, do not have game-breaking ones.
Look at trapped! No!
And the Game Boy Color version of the Philosopher's Stone is therefore not the best game. Yes, one such catastrophic glitch is rather easily accomplished in a handheld port of the first Harry Potter game. During potions class, after receiving the mission to collect some ingredients, if you dilly-dally and decide to speak with the nurse before going to Snape's office to collect the Boomslang skin, an error occurs that prevents the skin from spawning. It being a vital potion ingredient, the game will then softlock. The only way to remedy this is to quit without saving and return to your last checkpoint before you spoke to the nurse. However, if you saved the game after speaking to the nurse, there is nothing more to do than restart the game from the very beginning. The issue was fortunately discovered and fixed when the title was translated to other languages, meaning that only the English version still has this glitch. And to be honest, we probably deserve it for some historical colonial reason or other. And number 1, Flippando! This spell was a staple of the early Harry Potter games, used as a mechanic to flip switches, move objects, and generally harass NPCs around the Hogwarts castle. What might be news to you though is that this is the earliest example of a brand new spell being added to the Harry Potter canon from outside the books. Yes, the Flippando knockback jinx was specifically made for the first video game and only then became ingratiated into the wider wizarding world. It sadly faded into the background when other spells became more prominent in later games, although it still has a presence in one of the more recent Harry Potter titles, Hogwarts Mystery. Fingers crossed it appears in Hogwarts Legacy too. The best part though is the spell actually made a brief appearance in the stage play The Cursed Child during a duel between the now adults Draco and Harry, making it utterly unique in pop culture. Never before has something conceived in a video video game made its way into a West End and Broadway stage play, and goodness knows if it ever will again. Now that's a bit of trivia that certainly knocked me back. Okay, that's enough. Go home, everyone.